Sometimes anchor nuts can become so rusted that they are extremely difficult or impossible to remove with standard tools, such as an end wrench or socket. When anchor nuts experience extreme rust, they become brittle and flaky, which causes them to strip or round off when trying to loosen them. Today, we're going to provide you with a few alternative methods for removing rusted anchor nuts. The tools required for this job are listed here. Before you begin removing the nuts, be sure to secure the pole to a crane to support the weight of the light pole and prevent it from falling over. If working without the crane, only loosen one nut at a time. We recommend cleaning debris and rust from the threads and anchor nuts with a wire wheel. Oftentimes, applying penetrating oil on the threads and anchor nuts is enough to break the nuts loose and remove them. The more time the oil has to penetrate, the better. If there are excess threads extending above the anchor nut, cut off the excess threads. This will reduce the amount of time and effort needed to unthread the rusted nuts. It is common that the threads above the nut rust, which cause the nut to get stuck while unthreading. Cutting the excess threads will also allow a socket to fit over the nut. We recommend to first try an end wrench or socket to remove the nut. A socket is a better option if you have one, but be sure to check that the anchor bolt is not rotating with the anchor nut when you break it loose. If it does rotate, you run the risk of breaking off the anchor bolt. So at this point, we recommend using a torch to help loosen the nut. If the rusted nut is worn down or rounded off such that you are unable to get a grip on it with an end wrench or socket, we recommend using a pipe wrench. Like we mentioned earlier, if the bolt twists with the nut, stop and use a torch. The torch serves two purposes. It helps break the nut loose from the anchor bolt, and it makes the nut softer so you can hammer a 6-point socket onto the anchor nut. We recommend using a rosebud tip on your oxygen acetylene torch and heat all sides of the nut until they are near red hot. Be sure to place a metal plate between the light pole and the anchor nut as a heat shield barrier to prevent melting the wires inside the pole. Check your surroundings to make sure nothing near your work area is going to catch fire. Once the nut is red hot, hammer a 6-point socket onto the anchor nut. From there, you should be able to break the nut loose with the breaker bar and spin the nut off the rest of the way. We like to use an impact gun once the nut is loose. In situations where it's difficult to get a grip on the anchor nut with the socket, even after you've heated the nut, you can use a pipe wrench to break the nut loose and spin it off. When the rusted nuts have been removed, this is a good time to inspect your anchor bolts. If the anchor bolts have rust that is deeper than the thickness of the threads or it looks like an hourglass, the integrity of the anchor bolts may be compromised and needs to be addressed. Next, you can clean the anchor bolt threads if needed and install a new washer and anchor nut. Repeat these steps as needed for each anchor nut, being sure that the pole is supported by a crane or only loosening one anchor nut at a time if you're not using a crane to support the pole. If your bolts are rusty, check out our other videos on cleaning and repairing rusted bolts. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or would like more information, visit our website at lightpolesystems.com or call 714-786-8983. Light Pole Systems, specializing in light pole solutions.